You're now tuned to BS3 Network.
Welcome to another episode of Queen3 King. I am your host, King Doc. You see a bunch of people in the background on the screen. You see one unfamiliar face, and we'll get to that unfamiliar face in just a moment. And just like that, the season queen gets knocked off.
Every week.
She got a rainstorm in Anna, Texas, so she may be having technical difficulties throughout the day. So we'll just work through those. Yep. I'm going to introduce our initial queens, our normal co-host first, and then we'll get to our special co-host in just a moment. And we'll bring the season queen on when she comes. First, out of East Garland, Texas, now residing in Forney, Texas. Again, still basking in the glow in her recent victory over the state of Oklahoma and the city of Tulsa. She just got the ankle monitor off. The educator queen, Meba TT. Talk to the people, queen.
Good evening, everybody.
You want to talk a little louder? Are you trying to act like Anita Baker? You trying to put your sexy voice on because we got an attorney? You trying to learn an attorney? I think Peter got somebody already, so you just calm down.
Peter might got a brother or something. I'm about to say, you don't know what Peter has in it all. What he got going on.
And next, we have the baby queen, also out of Forney, Texas, by way of East Garland, Texas, formerly known as Blake's mama. She is now squarely known as Bronx's mama. And I, as president of the Booster Club and the uncle of the year, have taken over the rearing of Blake Val. She's also known as Mama Lee, the baby queen. Talk to the people.
Hello, everyone.
You didn't hear all the cheering in the background? It's a little quiet, but
so his godmother and the president of the Booster Club I don't have anything to do with his rear.
I said I've taken over. I didn't say you didn't contribute. Oh. Who pantry he go into every time he walk in the aisle? Because he know they got the best snacks in the world.
Well, I can't compete with you. I can't compete with you, honey bun.
All right, and next we have the season queen, who again is having technical difficulties there in the rain in dang near Van Augustine, Texas. She is the season queen, also known as Boney Maroney, Skinny Minnie, Darling Nikki, the Glamour herself. Talk to the people, queen.
Well, first of all, before I speak, my daughter asked me if I was going to use my proper voice or my ghetto voice.
Since we got Peter on.
Yes. And I said, well, I guess I will go ahead and use my proper voice.
Okay.
How's that, everybody?
Well, trust me, he's not impressed. He's not impressed. So as I introduce Peter, before I really get into that introduction, I first want to introduce a new segment that we have. And this new segment is called Don't Blame Me. So Peter, I'm going to dedicate this first edition of this new segment to you. Don't blame me. So in the viewing audience, you will be exposed to a lot of sisters. I have to beat the women off with a stick because I am typically the only handsome man on the program. So due to how well received I am on this show. So fair warning, if you start coming home with warm plates, with baked chicken, collard green, candied yams, and that good sweet cornbread, tell your wife, don't blame me. It ain't
if I go home with that, she's not going to get any.
And chances are you're not going to get any either. You know what I'm saying? If on Thanksgiving you start eating sweet potato pie and you're not touching the pumpkin pie, don't blame me.
Fair enough.
And without further ado, that brings us to our special guest today, my attorney. I can say that. I've worked all my life, so I can say that. You hear what I'm saying? My attorney, Peter Hall of the New and Hall Law Firm. Peter, say hello, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so for those of you who need to know, first of all, Peter is used to my shenanigans. From our very first meeting, I've been myself. So I want Peter, before I go into that any further, I want Peter to tell of his first impression of me in these first couple of little strategy meetings we had, sir.
Actually, Ivan, I think your personality here is a lot different because Craig filled up that room.
Craig was that, yeah.
And Sean was bantering about with him. You kind of sat there kind of quiet. You were the one that always kind of, okay, I can tell Ivan's got a lot of pull here, but he isn't saying much.
See what I'm saying?
He just sits there kind of quiet.
Yeah,
and I'm
that's
thinking,
what
I can't quite
bosses do.
read him.
Boy,
Yeah.
shut up. You
No,
let
he
him
was-
let him tell the story.
He was real quiet. Craig, of course, I'm sure y'all know Craig.
Yes.
He was making me roll on the floor laughing. But he and Sean, it was all him and Sean.
Yeah.
Ivan just sat there, and I thought, I don't think this guy likes me that much. I can't get him to talk.
Yeah. See, I was trying to make sure he was going to do his job good because I was paying him a lot of money. And he'll tell you that once the trials and stuff like that started, I was actually talking to him about strategy. And I was saying stuff like, hey, man, you need to object. That's badgering. Or, hey, you need to object. That's ask and answered, and stuff like that. And he's like, damn, do you know the terminology and everything here? Yeah. And Craig said, oh, yeah, that's my lawyer. When I don't want to pay a lawyer, that's my lawyer right there, So we had a good time, needless to say, had a good time with his staff and whatnot. And of course, Peter, I want you to tell about your specialty in terms of your law firm and what y'all specialize in and things of that nature.
Well, we kind of have a split, really, because I do, kind of varies a little bit, 70 to 80% probate, estate planning, wills, trusts, power of attorney, that kind of thing. And then I also do quite a lot of title work, real estate transactions, buying and selling, doing title policies, even just something as simple as a deed or a lease. Now, my partner, Everett, is the one, the litigator, the masochist in the group who likes that kind of thing. Yeah. I got out of the litigation. In fact, yours was pretty much the last case that I litigated. We didn't think we had an opponent, but that kind of turned out a little different in the end.
I wish we could tell that story, boy.
Yeah, but Everett does.
Did he win money, Peter?
I'm sorry.
Did he win money?
Let me. I'll handle this, Peter. It's called attorney-client privilege. So he's not gonna tell you none of that.
I didn't even know
until you pay him more than I paid him. He ain't gonna tell you that.
Peter, wink with your right eye if he won. Wink with your left eye if you did.
Your right or my right?
So one of the reasons I wanted to have Peter on is because Peter rolled with the punches good. Me and Craig were kind of at each other like me and Craig do. He rolled with that very nicely. And I mentioned the podcast to him probably day one, day two. And I said, hey, I got a podcast. I think you'd be great on it. People need to hear about this stuff anyway, And again, the title of this show is Where There's a Will, There's a Way. Because I believe this is a topic that we do not talk enough about.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna get some of the comments from the audience in and recognize them, and then we're gonna go into just a couple of questions. I'm gonna start with one basic question for the queens, and then the majority of the questions from that point forward will be for Peter. Sound good?
Yes.
Sounds great.
All right. And first, we got my niece in the building, Kay. She goes, hey, you're supposed to be watching Bronx, so concentrate on that.
Mama's there. Don't do that.
And then we got my daughter-in-law in Indianapolis. We got Brandy Dawkins in the house. What's going on? She says, hey,
number one realtor.
Yeah. And then we have H-Rap in the building, In the Bench Media. I just popped off of his show. I only had a few minutes today to check him out. But when I say, if you did not watch last night's episode of The Forecast, where we did the movie called Passing on Netflix, Okay, where the way Peter got his hair slicked back, you'd think Peter could be in Earth, Wind, and Fire, so he can pass himself. So that's what this movie was about. It's called Passing, and H-Rap did a fantastic job. So if you hadn't seen that, go back and watch that episode of The Forecast, and always support him on the End of the Bench show and his network, built for this network and built for this medium. We got Uncle Don in the building. Unfortunately, Lily just dropped off. She had technical difficulty, Don, so she'll be back. And Don says so eloquently, it's off the rails now. Yep. We rarely stay on the rails. So, yeah. Okay, yeah, Alicia was frozen. So,
yeah.
Hopefully she will be back soon. She's probably got to restart. And then we got Kirby in the building. What's up,
Kirby?
Hi, Kirby.
Peace and love. And then we got the Blue Streak Freak in the building, Theodora Harper.
Theodora.
She goes, hey, Queen and King Doc. So, Peter, what you got to understand is we develop a relationship with our viewers. And so some of them, depending on the topics, will divulge a little something about themselves that let us know. So when I call her the Blue Streak Freak, you can just use your imagination.
Theodora has been living. If y'all haven't been watching her online, you better do it, Theodora.
And I told Peter to switch over to criminal litigation, and I can get him a bunch of work just in this chat room alone.
No.
And then we have Shantae in the building.
Hey, cousin.
What's going on? She just has a laugh. So we appreciate y'all for tuning in. Hopefully this will be some good information. So again, I wanted to start with just a basic question for the queens. We'll start with the seasoned queen. Do you have a last will and testament?
No, not yet. But we have been working on one. But it's not completed.
Y'all been working on it.
Yep.
Okay, what y'all doing? Y'all going to the library researching it? What the hell y'all
doing?
No,
we're trying to get it together before we get an attorney involved.
Legal Zoom. Hey, what you talking about? All right. Mika, do you have a last will and testament? See, she embarrassed to say it, Peter. That's all right. And you work in Richardson, so you right down the street from Peter. So you can go get your will done on your lunch break.
So,
you are. I forget about that.
No, although I have insurance and different plans and all that, I do not have a last will and testament.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't be embarrassed. Unfortunately, most people don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm going to go to you, Peter. What, in your estimation, and I'm sure you may not know the specific statistics of this, but what percentage of Americans would you say have a will?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. It'd be a wild guess, but just based on the year's experience, I'd say it's at best 50% do.
Yeah. I can see that. And that might be high, Peter, in terms of who has one. That might be high. When you start factoring in Mississippi and West Virginia and Alabama and Arkansas, that number gonna go way down.
Yeah.
And you would think after COVID and all, this pandemic and monkeypox and all this stuff that we've gone through, people would run and get that done.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why I'm embarrassed.
I kind of expected, an onslaught of calls during the.
Exactly.
My work was such that I tried to work at home for the first week, and I finally decided it's just not going to work. So I was in the office the whole time, and although I stayed busy, I didn't get the onslaught that I really expected. That people would be getting nervous and thinking, "Oh God, I got to do something about this."
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, hopefully you're going to get a few clients after this show because, matter of fact, I talked to Pastor Dawkins today. He texted me, and he was very happy that we were going to have Peter on today. So hopefully, he said, hopefully some of these parishioners will get these wills and insurance and everything else that's needed.
Yeah.
So, Peter, why don't you go into real quickly? I don't want to assume that anybody knows exactly what we mean when we're talking about a will. What is a will and testament?
In short, a will is a document that you prepare, and it does not have any effect until you've died. And it is your opportunity to control where the property that you own at the time of your death, where it goes, to whom, and in what shares. And the biggest problem in a nutshell of not having one is that you lose that control. And when I give talks and things, I always kind of start with what kind of sounds like a joke, but really isn't. And that is, who here thinks their state government knows exactly what they're doing at all times?
Exactly.
Right.
And then I followed up with if you don't have an estate plan, your state government has one for you.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, you're not going to like it. Yeah, it may accomplish what you want, but the odds are against it.
Yeah.
So a will really, it boils down to, you identify your family, you identify somebody to be in charge of your estate afterwards, and then you say where your property is going to go.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to be coaching you through in and out some of the things here during this show, Peter. And so you said that it does not take effect until after you've died. Well, somebody, Big Mama, is watching, and we don't say died, we say passed.
Okay.
So you say after you done passed. All right. So there are certain things you need to start saying when you're talking to my cousins.
Gotcha. And actually, coincidentally, I generally do, somebody calls me and says that a loved one has passed.
Yeah.
I usually do refer to it as when did
If they call you and say they passed, it's us.
Yeah.
No, really. But I do it with everybody. I don't know why. Because, I just feel it sounds a little blunt. Okay, when did they die?
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
when
Right.
I'm trying to be, what's the
Delicate.
word?
Delicate.
Yeah, delicate,
Yeah.
and it's not something that they're calling me because they're happy about. We hope so.
Exactly.
Trying to be a little sensitive. That's the
Right.
word.
Blue Streak Freak says my husband and I both have one. Well, that's
I
solid.
love that.
That's solid. That's solid.
Good.
What you may want to redo it because you didn't know me when y'all got this put together, I'm sure. And because of all the laughter I done brought into your life, I know you want to leave me with a little something. So Peter, let me add, and Mika, Nikki, and then Lily looks like she's coming back in. If y'all got any questions, just jump in. You know how we do it, right?
Yeah.
So before I ask Peter this next question, Lily, you got us?
Yeah, I got you. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
So I asked them, yeah, we got you. We asked them a question that I did not get to ask you. Do you have a last will and testament?
I do not.
See, Peter, that's 2 clients, and we're gonna try to talk Nikki out of this legal Zoom and get 3
No,
clients.
baby, I don't just say nothing about no legal.
So speaking of this legal Zoom, let me ask you this question, Peter. Are handwritten wills
That was my question.
Yeah, or word created documents legal and or honored?
Short answer, yes. As Ivan, you've probably learned with me, any lawyers, there's no such thing as a short answer, right?
Right.
Texas and most states do recognize what we call a holographic will. That means it must be 100% in your handwriting and signed by you. It cannot be typed and then printed and signed unless you have 2 disinterested witnesses and a notary. And you can't do part of one and part the other. So it's kind of an all or nothing. If you're going to type it, that's fine. Get 2 people who do not have any connection to the will at all to witness your signature and get a notary so that you have 3 extra people. However, if you write 100% in your handwriting and sign it, you do not need witnesses and you do not need a notary.
Interesting.
Wow.
That distinction was
That's
in play.
crazy.
Now let me, and Ivan, I don't want to take up too much time, but let me make a couple of quick points on a holographic will. And this is kind of one of those things where people ask me, and I'm going to circle back around to my point, but people ask me, can I just find a will on the internet? And my answer is yes, you can. But if you're not familiar with them, how are you going to know when you find the right one? So if you're typing your own, you're writing it by hand, it doesn't matter. Be sure, for Texas specifically, you're going to name, even if you don't ultimately need it, but you're going to name someone to serve as an executor. That is a person who's in charge of all of your assets, handles all the bills, and then distributes everything to whomever you leave your property to. But in Texas, you want to name that person to serve as an independent executor and to serve without bond. You remember the old kids game, Mother May I?
Yeah.
That's the default. If you don't say that your executor is going to be independent, then that means that they are dependent. That means they are dependent upon getting the court's permission to wipe their nose.
Wow.
So, and that adds time and tremendous expense.
Right.
So, but the only thing you have to do is just say, hey, my executor shall be independent, and it's done.
That's it. Love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. And just, number one, the executor question was going to be my next question. So you kind of had already.
Mhm.
And I will also say that as I was kind of preparing for the show, I noticed right away, I'm like, we're going to have a part 2 because
Great.
this is going to be more general about this sort of things, but there are going to be some factors and facets of wills and probates and that kind of living trust that I want to be able to dig into in depth in some future shows if you're available. Okay.
I'll always be available.
Wonderful. And let's see. My nephew says, Unc, I just want that French toast recipe from your estate play. I got you. I got you. Okay. So living trust. I mentioned that. What are living trusts, Peter?
A trust is another estate planning document. It is not in substitution of a will.
Mm-hmm.
However, it acts very, very similarly to a will in that you name, during your lifetime, you are the trustee of the trust, which means that you own it, you manage it, it's for your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes on to say, upon my death, whatever property is owned by my trust shall go to the following people. And you name a successor trustee who's kind of the similar, not 100%, but pretty close to the equivalent of an executor in your will.
Gotcha.
Two big distinctions. The trust can become effective as soon as you sign it.
Mm-hmm.
And second is that it does not go to probate. Now, as a side note, not every will that gets drafted goes to probate. We don't make that determination until after you've passed on because it depends on the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon. Somebody will bring me a family member's will. I visit with them for 30, 45 minutes. And I say, under these circumstances, as you've described them, this will does not need to be probated, but then frequently they do. The trust never goes through probate, and it does not even go to court unless there's a fight. And if somebody's trying to change it or dispute it or something, well, then we can't avoid that. I always use analogies because I'm a very visual learner. Consider a trust like a bucket, right? You come to me and you say, I want a trust. Okay, great. I can build that bucket for you. But a trust doesn't do anything unless it actually owns the property. Now, and I use that term loosely. So you come to me, we created trust, and you transfer ownership of your house into it. Well, you own the trust, so you still own the house. You don't lose anything. But that trust at that point then has ownership of that house or car or account or whatever it might be. And then upon your death, it can transfer it to whomever you've designated. Wow. So if you never actually put something into that trust, you've just bought an empty bucket and it's not doing you much good.
And that's that right away, that's something that I want to dig into. Part 2 also is the benefits of those living trusts, because I hear a lot of people, especially those that got money, who talk about living trust. In fact, some of my customer base, a lot of them have living trust, because that's whenever they are issuing us payments and I see the checks and stuff like that, they're living trusts and whatnot. And so that's going to be something part 2 I want to really dig into, because I think that there's a lot of business owners here. In fact, there are at least 2, maybe 3 in the chat room right now. One of them is asking a question, and we're going to get to that just next. But that's one of the areas that I want to be able to dig into next show for sure. Let's see. And the question I wanted to get to, this is Don.
Hey, Uncle Donald.
Yeah, he came on while you were out, to say that this show was already off the rails. So he says, I don't have a will. I own a couple of businesses, including a significant amount of property. Doesn't everything go to my wife if I pass? I'm in Illinois. So I'm glad he made that distinction, because I understand that different states may do different things. So Peter,
in different states.
What's your best answer on that one?
Well, I'll have to give my answer in context of Texas, but it would not take much of a Google search to see if it's any different.
Right.
Short answer is it depends, and that's kind of.
Oh my gosh.
So two things about it. Nothing is automatic, right? So it doesn't matter what your circumstances is. Nothing is automatic.
No matter what state as well.
Probably.
There may be a state that's laws are written a little different and theirs is automatic in that state. But for the most part, I would say it's safe to assume that most states have some sort of contingency because they know there are enough circumstances that you can't make it automatic.
Right. And that's the safer assumption because you don't want to be wrong assuming that there is an automatic one. And it is a exceedingly common and unfortunate belief that, well, everything just goes to my spouse. Well, it might. First off, it only might go to your spouse. But second off, there's nothing automatic about it. Something must be done. And it's kind of a bizarre example. Okay, so Texas is a community property state, right?
That's right.
I own my house 50-50 with my wife. There is nothing saying that I have to leave my wife the other half of our house in my will.
Ooh.
I can leave it to anybody. I can leave it to you, Ivan.
No, appreciate that. Got it down.
So to kind of get to Don's question, where I started to say it depends, again, in the context of Texas, if you die without a will, and I was talking earlier about if you don't have one, then your state government has one for you. Well, Texas says if the spouse that dies has so much as one child from a prior relationship, does not matter if you have any together, if you have so much as one outside, then all of the children to that particular person inherit the community half. So I have had multiple conversations with recent widows who come to me and say, my husband died. He didn't have a will. And oh, by the way, he has 3 kids, all of whom hate me. And they're being mean to me all the time. And I have to say, ma'am, I'm sorry, but those 3 kids own the other half of your house.
Oh my God.
And
when they're going to say, get your ass out.
Well, they can't kick her out.
When you stay in that half there, we got the bathroom, you got the kitchen.
That's right. So
that's usually why you see a lot of them have to go through the sale of a house because they can't get to an agreement.
That happens a lot.
See, but in regards to Don's question, I was thinking that it automatically went to your wife, to your spouse.
Me too.
So they have to be actually named in the will.
Oh my God!
Anything.
They have to be named in the will. Now, if by contrast, all of the children for the person that died are of the current marriage,
right.
Most of the property, although not all, not 100%, but all of the community property will in fact pass to that spouse, but it still isn't automatic. Now, their rights to the surviving spouse's rights to the property arise instantaneously, but the world doesn't know because there's no document that says surviving spouse over here inherited everything. So we have to do something to transfer it.
Wow. See, that's another aspect. Texas being a community property state, and then you know how some folks will live together, and the old folks will tell you, all right, you better be careful just living with them, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
After 6 months, so I want to dig into that later too. Because I might have 7, 8 wives out there here as far as I know.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh,
you weren't supposed to laugh at that, Peter. Yeah, this serious business. All right.
Wow.
So A-Trap asks, what is the success rate of a protested will?
Oh, that I don't know that I could put a number to that. There are some things to think about. So a local judge who's very well respected, been on the bench for decades, has kind of taken a pragmatic comment to that. In if let's say the contested will leaves everything to the kids in reasonably equal shares, and it's being protested because one of them, for whatever reason, good, bad, or indifferent, feels they should have gotten more.
Right.
Well, that judge just said, look, you really think you're going to convince a jury that most other things being equal, that you should get something different and that your parent did not understand what they were doing when they left it in reasonably equal shares. So overall, I would say the rate of success for contested wills generically is probably pretty low. Because in Texas, the only ways to invalidate a will is to allege that mom was nutty, completely out of her mind, didn't know what she was signing. And, maybe there are 4 kids and only 2 are listed in the will and doesn't even mention the other 2. And, clearly she wasn't in her right mind. Well, my sister took her to the lawyer. My sister insisted and twisted mom's arm and forced her to come up with this. That will really reflects my sister's wishes, not my mother's.
Okay.
So we say that's undue influence. Okay. But that one is exceedingly difficult to prove. The third way is a forgery. Mom never really signed that will. Somebody else signed her name, and they had a friend who was a notary, and they notarized it anyway.
Yeah.
So you're not ever going to be able to, I mean, of course, there's an exception to anything, right? But the realistic odds of ever contesting the will simply because you don't like it are slim to none.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I that's what I would have gathered, is that the success rate was probably pretty low overall. And that's simply because typically if somebody goes to the trouble of creating a will, the courts are generally going to lean toward honoring that, if that makes any sense.
And Texas law even says even if it's somewhat ambiguous, we're going to try our best to interpret that will to give effect to that person's intent.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so, there was a show I was watching, and they made a comment, and I knew this show was coming up, and I thought to myself, I wonder if that's legit, if they can do that. And it said, if anybody contests this will, they are automatically, their percentage is divided up amongst the other 2 that are in there. Is that a legal thing to put in the will or whatever?
It is. We call it a no contest clause, and I put it in all of mine. Now, keep in mind,
say something you won't. This needs to be the number 1 clause in the Black community. Hey,
it should be none of this. It should be in all wills, as far as I'm concerned. It should be in all of them. But granted, now the person challenging the will, if they win, if they get that will thrown out, that clause goes with it.
That's right.
Right. But I put a very strong no contest clause in mind that effectively says, if you contest this will, or if you even so much as help somebody contest this will,
you're out.
Assuming you lose, you get nothing. We treat you like you died before the person did.
Wow.
Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Y'all got to help me interpret Don's comment. He goes, "Ain't none of those kids in my neighborhood." What kids he talking about?
The outside kids. When he was talking about any.
Good. Then assuming Illinois is like Texas, then yes, your wife will get most, not 100%, but most of it. But again, it's not automatic.
All right. And Craig said, CJ said, he teaching me something on tonight. And look, Craig is smart enough. When he said on tonight, he trying to be real funny with that sentence.
Is that our Craig?
No, that's his son. That's his son. Yeah, that's his son. So yeah, CJ, he
on
teaching
tonight.
me something too.
On tonight, baby.
We got Golden Brooks in the building, living life like what's going on, man? Good to have you. Good to have you. All right. So next question. So isn't estate planning just for the folks who's wealthy? If they ain't got that much, why I need to be doing estate planning, man?
Exactly. Yeah.
If you own anything, you have an estate. It might only be worth a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000.
$4.32.
Y'all fight over this. The rest of this bottle of prepared in there.
That microphone next to Ivan, that's part of his estate. It's probably worth quite a bit.
Yeah.
No, but think about it, your house or your cars, even something as simple as your bank account. And she'd probably slap me around if she knew this, but I use my mother as an example in a lot of scenarios. And my mother lives in an independent living, and we sold her house years ago. Her only assets are financial. She didn't have a car. So it just monetary.
Right.
She still has an estate to give away. Now, there are ways to reduce the odds of probate, and everybody always asks me, how do I avoid probate? And there are ways to do it. No guaranteed way, but ways to do it. But let's say my mother passed away and she hadn't put any beneficiaries or anybody else on those accounts. We're going to court at that point to get her will probated. Not that it's a fight or anything. It's just to get a court to authorize someone on behalf of the estate to go to that bank and get the money. So it doesn't matter if it's $1,000 or $100,000. Yeah. You have an estate if you own anything, and you, even if your will doesn't ultimately get probated or used, that's still your opportunity to control its destination.
Love it. All right, we're going to pause just a moment for station identification. And Alicia told somebody to stop crunching that ice. Whoever crunching ice need to stop. That must be me, because the way she looked like a kid that was in trouble.
He wasn't even supposed to say that out loud.
See, Peter, I'm gonna tell you what's different about me. We have the ability to have a private chat amongst the guests and hosts and whatnot. I'm the kind of guy I'll produce on the air. I don't care. We real folks here, and if we need to tell you to quit crunching some damn ice, we're gonna tell you to quit crunching that damn ice.
I can hit mute.
I can even see that.
I can see it in your face.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Peter?
I said I can see y'all's private chat.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't have told you that.
Right, because they might have said something crazy. Like, ooh, I wish Peter wasn't married, but I did like that.
Well, hey, I want to see those.
All right, we're going to pause just a second for station identification.
PS3 Network, changing the way you listen to podcasts.
All right. So you mentioned probate. So for those of you who don't know specifically what that is, can you give a brief explanation of exactly what probate is?
Sure. Assuming it is necessary, it is the process where I file a court application for the court to formally recognize the will that you've left behind and to formally appoint the person that you've named in your will to serve as the executor. And then when that's done, which is very, very straightforward, the executor gets issued a single-page certificate called letters testamentary. And that really, I guess, is your kind of your badge of authority. I'm the executor. The court has said so. I walk in and I say, I need to close that bank account and you need to issue a check to the estate. And I'm going to take it somewhere else, or I'll reopen an estate account here. But now I'm the court authority representative of whatever the person has.
Now you call that when it's necessary. So why would it not be necessary? Can I go? Because I'm assuming I can't go to the bank with this will and saying, "Hey, I'm the guy."
You're correct. Okay. I'll go back to using my mother as an example, right? So far as I know and believe, she has left my siblings and me as beneficiaries on her accounts.
She ain't got no cats, does she?
No telling. but if she did, assuming she did, if all of her accounts have beneficiaries, then we don't need to probate her will, because a beneficiary designation, be it on an account, financial account, or an insurance policy or anything like that, that supersedes the will as far as that asset is concerned.
Okay.
So your day-to-day checking account that you pay your electric and water bill out of, you can actually put a beneficiary on that account.
Right.
Different from taking your child to the bank and saying, hey, bank, I want to add my child onto my account so they can sign checks. That's a different thing altogether. But if all of the assets have some documentation that transfers their ownership upon the original owner's death, then we don't have to probate the will, because really when you boil it down, the purpose of a will is a document that is going to transfer ownership of any kind of asset that has a document elsewhere that says who owns it, right? So a deed on a house, or the bank knows that, hey, that's Ivan's checking account. Well, okay, his will says it goes to cousin Fred, and now that's who's in charge. So if there are no assets that need title transferred, then we don't have to probate.
So I have a question. So if my dad, he's put us on his account, his banking account,
Mm-hmm.
So if he were to pass away without a will, and we went into the bank and said, hey, we need to withdraw all the money, we couldn't do that without what?
We'll see. Hang on, Peter, because I want her to distinguish the difference. Because again, she says he put us on his bank account. Did he add you as signers on the account?
Or beneficiaries.
Or beneficiaries.
We are only signers.
So then that means, as far as I'm concerned, Peter, they can go get the money out without any question.
That's what I'm.
And it's a matter of who gets there first, right? If there's
potentially.
If there's three signers on the account,
and I'm gonna beat Alicia.
Potentially. Now, the more detailed question is, did he add you as a joint account holder, which means you're a joint owner?
We're joint owners.
Okay, then yes. Technically, you could even do it while he's alive, really, because the law says any joint account owner can go at any time to that bank and close that account. So you could do it tomorrow, but to answer your question, yes, if your father passed away, any one of you that is a joint account owner can get to that bank, because the law says the survivors own it. It's theirs.
That's right.
Okay.
Now, by contrast, just because there is a distinction, if your dad added you as simply an authorized signer, where he's effectively saying, hey, bank, I want to add her to where she can sign checks and make withdrawals and conduct business, but she doesn't have any ownership interest in it. In that instance, when he dies, the bank's going to say, I'm so sorry, but you are no longer allowed to conduct business on that account. And
that's if they know he died, Peter.
That is true.
Because if they don't know he done died, see, I'm gonna tell you this, man. I done been black a long time, man, and I done seen some shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if I can get to that bank before any word is out, I mean, think about it. I'm being funny, but think about it, man. You've heard stories of people still getting their grandmother's Social Security check, months and years after she done passed away and stuff like that. So it's not like they make some sort of announcement and they notify every single institution that's necessary. I mean, hell, if the government don't know you done died, it's a lot of people that don't know.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a couple of, I'm going to get to the funny question first, and I'm going to get to Don's more serious question. So CJ said, who y'all think deserve the most out of y'all for? Obviously, it's me. So I don't even think that's a question.
Me.
And then Don says, I mentioned the business and property. I own 51% of the main business and 80% of the properties. Can my partners challenge ownership if I have no will? I think that's a fantastic question for business owners out there. And then he wants to say, hey, Alicia, I love you, and we'll see you in November. I need to know what the hell is going on in November.
They're coming to visit.
Okay, then we'll see you then, Don.
Yeah.
We'll see you, Uncle D.
All right, go ahead, Peter. Oh, I'm gonna leave the question up just in case.
Yeah. No, the fact that you don't have a will does not give your business partners any more rights than they have right now. So the only way they could challenge your ownership is if they had some document that suggested that you signed it over to them or sold it to them or anything like that.
But I would have.
It actually brings up a great issue. So, who can challenge my will? Well, the only people that could challenge your will would be a beneficiary named in it, or someone who is your legal heir. So let's say I have 3 kids and I only put 2 of them in the will. Well, either 2 in the will could challenge it, but then that kid I left out can challenge it too. But my wife can't. My wife could. My brother or sister cannot. My parents cannot.
Okay.
But so there's a narrow pool.
Yeah. And so for me, let me ask you this. So a couple of things. Number one, on the business aspect of it, you said a business partner can't challenge ownership, but wouldn't his wife or estate need to have the document that says this 51% of this is mine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think I do. Presumably the company has corporate records. I'm saying corporate loosely.
Right.
Company records that says who the owners are and in what percentages and what changes that might have been over time. If maybe they started 50-50 and then one buyer or one partner bought an additional 10 from the other guy or whatever it may be. So we hope at that point that the company has records. Now, just like you were saying, that assumes that somebody tells the bank that someone's died. Well, that assumes that the company has kept documentation as to transactions, which of course they should. Doesn't mean they do.
Right.
And
it's no different on the properties as well, because he goes 80% of the properties. So same situation. Is there, because it's property, and I know this is Illinois versus Texas, so it may be different, but because it's property, is that treated different than business?
No, because, and I'm also making some assumption here that Don owns 80% of the properties through his interest in the company. Now, if he owns them in his individual name, well, then it doesn't really change the answer. But a lot of it just, kind of goes back to that answer of it depends. I'd need to see documentation to give a more specific answer. But hey, 51% is great. That's it gives you the voting rights and things like that.
Right.
But, keep accurate records, whether it be in your personal name or in your company name.
Right. All right. Brandon said, I want to come into November 2. Y'all feel free to invite me. Well,
you're invited.
Yeah, come on.
Come on.
Okay. And Don said the properties are
in local.
Or a local, maybe.
I guess he's saying they're local properties.
Or local.
Yeah, that's what I would have figured in Illinois.
LLC.
Oh, an LLC.
Oh.
Okay.
So yeah, the LLC owns the property, and then the owners of the LLC have their, basically, if you boil it down to it, they kind of have the same respective share. If I own 40% of the LLC, then I have a 40% interest in the assets.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. Also, do you do, and I don't want you to talk in specifics about LLCs, but I know a lot of people will form LLCs in the way that they handle financial stuff just on a day-to-day basis. It could just be just me, but I want to form an LLC because there's certain tax provisions and other stuff that allows me to operate in a more favorable manner. Do you handle stuff like that too, Peter, for folks? Or
I do, and it came up because I do so much real estate that, and I know we're not going to delve off into it, but over the years, I've started helping people create an LLC because a lot of people own multiple houses for rental property.
Yeah.
And, for liability protection, personal liability, we want to transfer those rental properties into the LLC and on down that route. So yes, I do that very regularly.
Okay. And Don says exactly. He's trying to say exactly. Okay, great. And then one of the things that got brought to mind as Peter was talking, because the case we were involved in, without going into too many specifics, but talking about heirs and things of that nature, right? So the older people get and the more kids and stuff like that doesn't took place, the stickier this way up can be weaved, right?
Did you win money?
So whenever you start talking about, this particular individual passed on, they have 4 children. Well, those 4 children, this one had 2, this one had 3, this one had 2, this one had 5, but this one passed away. So if you follow what's happening now with this spider web, this tree, so it can get sticky quick, in terms of heirs and who has a right to what and all those other kind of things. So to me, that's one of the things that says, do yourself a favor, spell this stuff out in an official document, just to make it easy on the people you leave behind, as simple as that, and I know that sometimes our family, like Corey, my oldest, when I called him and I talked to him about this stuff, he always come to me at the end of it. He listened, he goes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. All right. I got it. And then he wait till I'm through talking and he'll say, what's going on? I'm like, nothing, man. He goes, ain't nothing happening. Why are you talking about this? Man, because I want it to be easy for you,
Yeah.
He goes, well, I know you're finna go to Costa Rica next week, so that ain't why you saying nothing, is it? No, man, I'm just trying to make sure y'all straight. So so it's easier.
He will ask, or Brandy will ask, hey, Corey is concerned because Dad called.
So I understand that it's a difficult subject. So you get this all the time, Peter. So this wasn't a planned question, but I'm going to ask you this. Do you have any advice on either what people can say to broach the subject or how they can overcome any objection to have the conversation within their families? What advice can you give people on, y'all need to have this conversation, here's how you get over it?
That's actually a tough question, because I've had a lot of clients who, I've actually had a client break down in tears here because she didn't want to talk about her own will.
Yeah.
But it's very common, kind of like you're saying, your son saying, okay, what's the hidden agenda here? It can be a difficult conversation. And I suppose if I'm sitting down with my kids and I'm wanting to tell them, hey, look, here's what you should expect at some point, since it's kind of inevitable that at some point I'm going to pass. It is. I'm going to tell them it's going to be easier for you to handle if you know what to expect. And especially for those scenarios where maybe one child is being favored over the others for good or bad reasons. If I tell people a lot, especially when they come and they say, well, look, I'm going to leave at 60-40. Okay, fine. You want to help reduce the odds that your kids are going to start fighting when you're gone. Tell them. Tell them with people around, because then there's evidence that you're not nuts. You're not doing this because you didn't know what you were doing and you think that somebody's getting something that they shouldn't or whatever. And everybody knows. And you live another 5, 10, 20, 30 years, it's going to be real hard for that kid that got a little bit less to come back and say it was a mistake, because you've known about it. So I don't necessarily know how to answer to how to overcome the objection to the conversation, other than I understand this is not a topic that you look forward to hearing about, but you don't want to be blindsided. So, I guess if somebody's objecting to me, I'm saying, look, I know you don't want to hear this, but you're going to hear it. Because you have to know, and I'm doing you a favor.
Right.
Well, I heard a friend state she lost her mother. She said it was not only hard burying her, it was hard trying to go back and get her assets in order as well. So she's like, it was a double hit, because, not only did they have the funeral, but they had people arguing about what she had, because she had, quite a bit of money. Then they had to go back and see who got what. And she said that went on for over a year. So having your stuff in order is good.
I have a question. Like, if you have younger children, like children that are younger than 18, so my kids are pretty young, but you know that if something happens to me, I want it to go to them. How do you go about figuring that out? Or are you just putting someone older like as a beneficiary and making sure they do right by your kids?
No, that's an excellent question. Never assume that your friend or your relative, whomever is going to do that, because I have a horrible story about that.
I got you.
So that's a fantastic question, really. So let's say your kids are 3 and 8. And so you want to leave everything to them, but you're going to have a provision in your will. It's called a contingent trust. And the trust will arise contingent upon the child's age, that when they are actually going, when you pass away and when they're going to receive it. So your will says, well, hey, I leave everything in equal shares to my 2 kids. Next section down, the contingent trust. Oh, but wait a minute. If anybody that's going to inherit from me is underage and you get to pick that number, don't give it to them outright. My best friend over here, or Ivan, is going to be the trustee for the benefit of those kids, and he's going to manage the money for those kids. Now, that just sets up a gatekeeper, right? So your 2 children still own that money. It is theirs and it is for their benefit. But we are hoping that our 18-year-old kids who just got a wad of cash are going to go to college and not go buy a new Corvette. So, Ivan's in charge of the money at that point. They come to Ivan, try to butter him up. Hey, favorite Uncle Ivan, I really want a new car, and I found this fantastic new Corvette. Ivan says, great. How about a Honda? And, they say, well, I've got a tuition bill. I need college paid for. I've got a medical bill. Great. Bring me the bill. I will pay it for you out of your money. Years go by, they reach whatever your magical age is, 25, 30, whatever you want.
Mhm.
I'm says, hey, happy birthday. You still have some money left in your trust account. Here it is.
Yeah.
And at that point, you just give it to them.
Okay.
Now, I can tell war stories all day long, but I am going to share one with no names because a woman I knew did exactly what you suggested or what you mentioned about do I leave it to somebody else hoping that they'll take care of? Well,
Right.
that doesn't happen always. So this lady I knew had inherited herself an $800,000 retirement account.
Oh my
She
God.
had 2 children, 6 and 12. She died unexpectedly from cancer. She was single. We find out she had named her best friend as the beneficiary of that retirement account with the verbal agreement that if I leave this to you, you'll take care of my children. Guess what she did?
Took the money and ran.
Precisely
Ugh.
$800,000. She said, you know what? She left me as a beneficiary. It's mine.
Oh my gosh.
And so let me
Sick.
ask you this,
Sick.
doing it the proper way, right? Which is naming him the executor of that trust, right? That the kids own.
Yes. So what I tell people is,
Can you stop them from what's to stop me? Let's say that same scenario. Lily says, okay, your Uncle Ted is over y'all money till y'all turn 25. What's to stop me? You know, of course I wouldn't, but what's to stop somebody from, I'm gonna go buy me some new rims with this. I'm gonna take to Hawaii with this. What's to stop me from spending money out of that trust account on what I say? Well, this was necessary. I went to Hawaii to go research the best institution for them to go to or whatever, right?
Yeah. Technically, there's not going to be any barrier that actively prevents you from doing so. However, as that trustee for that child, you owe that child a legal duty called a fiduciary duty. And that is the highest level of legal obligation, fair dealing, trust. I mean, it's the top of the line burden that you have to show, that you have to provide that child with that duty. If you breach it by taking money out of it, spending it, the kid has never asked you for a dime, and he comes to you when he's reached the maturity age, and you say, sorry, sucker, there's nothing left.
Yeah.
And he's going, what? I never got any of it. Well, you've breached your fiduciary duty. He can sue you. And if he can show that you did it intentionally, he can get a judgment against you for triple.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So no, there's no physical barrier stopping you, but it might cost you dearly in the end.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine the same thing, because again, I'm playing devil's advocate, right? And so why in certain communities, having a will or trusting authority figures or attorneys or something like that, what's to stop my attorney from sneaking in this clause in my will? I don't know shit about no wills. I can't read these 25 pages or whatever the case may be that says I'm actually his beneficiary. Would that same fiduciary responsibility be in play in conjunction with the attorney-client situation? What stops an attorney from doing that?
Several things, actually. The law would say that if I'm drafting a will and I draft into that will a gift to me, the law says it's void. It doesn't exist. It's as if it's not there. The court would never allow it. And now, have attorneys stolen estates from people? Yes, unfortunately they have. That's why we have the high public opinion of us that we have. But like I said, the law is going to say it's void. But the other beneficiaries could turn right around and sue me, and even potentially bring an action against me such that I would lose my law license.
Right.
So I actually, I have some higher stakes potentially in that I could lose my livelihood. Even if I, as a beneficiary of a trust, could get triple judgment against you. Well, if you don't have any money, that judgment's just a piece of paper. Yeah. But they can take my license.
I would have imagined that for an attorney, I would think that would border on a criminal offense as well, a federal type situation.
Well, it isn't, but as my father would have called it, it would be criminally stupid
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So Brandy says, I appreciate Dad being so responsible. It encouraged Corey and I to have the conversation. And that reminds me of something else I was going to say is that if you get a will, even if you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, wills are for people who really got a lot of stuff that they need to divvy up and all that other kind of stuff. Even if you don't think you have a lot of stuff and you get a will, subconsciously, in my estimation, that's going to encourage and motivate you to say, I want to actually leave them something. You know, I got a will. Let me work a little harder. Let me be a little bit more diligent with what I have to make sure that they're cared for. Or that conversation may lead you to another one, such as mortgage insurance on your house. So when you pass, it's automatically paid, or a life insurance policy that's equal to the amount you owe on your house, or whatever the case may be. It'll lead to another steps that says, I want to not only have one, now I want to give them the advantage of leaving them something. And I got news for you out there. If you don't think that there's a certain segment of the population who gets a leg up in life through life insurance and wills and what they're left behind, you're sadly mistaken. This is the easiest way to make sure that that next generation has the ability to do greater things than you did.
Yeah.
I mean, let me throw one thing in for now, if I can remember it all. So it just went right out of my head.
It happens.
Oh, darn it. Shoot. Well, if I think of it, I'll mention it to you.
Yeah,
I dropped it.
Don says, Peter, he said he gave this question to the opposite of that question. I have a simple situation. How do I just leave it laid out simply? Then he answered it. He goes, never mind. Your answer will be have a will. So
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Actually, and that question helped me remember what I was going to say. So you started that off by saying, even if you don't think you have very much, well, your will is not taking a snapshot in time to say it only disposes of what you have this minute.
Right.
So if we're doing these at an appropriate time in our lives, we're young, right? We don't wait till we're 70 or 80 to do a will. We do it now because we don't know if we're going to get hit by a bus next week. So, but if I'm 22 and I decide to go ahead and do a will, right, I might not have anything to my name right now, but the hope is over time I'm going to acquire things, and that will is going to continue to cover everything I own, whether it's a lot or a little.
Right.
So they're not for the rich; they're for everybody. And an estate, Hollywood has played up estates and inherits all this other stuff. Yeah, sure, we'd all like to have the multi-million-dollar mansion and the Rolls Royce and all this other stuff, but an estate can be as simple as the plastic bag full of clothes that I have if I needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. So the 22-year-old says, I'm going to get a will. Let's just say, okay, that 22-year-old got a will when he was 22. He went 20 years without putting anything else in there because he just like, okay, that's taken care of, out of sight, out of mind. I'm living life. Is there a provision that he could have put in that will at 22 that says my future children will get equal portions and stuff like that before they're even born?
Yes, that is a great question.
Okay.
So as I'm drafting wills, I'm visiting with people who are your kids, how old are they, and if it's an appropriate audience, I'll say, you think you might have any future children? Because I can draft the will to say, okay, I have 2 children today, but I might have more. So if at the time of my death, I only have the following 2 children, well, then they get everything. But however, should I have 1 or 20 more, I want my estate to be distributed amongst all of my children then living. So yes, I absolutely can do that. So the 22-year-old is not married and doesn't have children, and we can take it 20 different ways, but that kid could say, at the time of my death, if I have children, then I leave everything to them. If I don't, then I leave everything to my brother or sister or best friend. You don't have to leave your estate to your family if you don't choose to.
Wow. Okay. So a couple of questions, and then we're going to wrap it up with some final thoughts. So Ben is in the building. He goes, good evening.
Hello.
Then the story about the 800,000 with the lady, he goes, that story is wild. And then
Yeah.
he says the will discussion needs to happen no matter the age. I agree. And then Brandy says that conversation made me realize that I had a $500,000 life insurance policy that I purchased when I was younger. My beneficiary was Braylon, and technically that would have went to his dad because I had no contingencies in place, and his dad would have become his guardian if I passed away. That scared me and almost caused me to die. they would have been living good for about 2 months off that 500K life insurance policy. LOL, I joke, but that was serious.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of the show, and that's why I thought it would be a benefit because it would take what? No, I'm 45 and I need a little bread. Wow, that's tough. That's tough. I didn't even read that one. But I knew that this would be a situation where there were some common misconceptions or some assumptions about wills and probates and all that other stuff, and then just some stuff that we just flat out didn't know. So I thought to myself, this will be a great conversation, and then
very good conversation.
I prepared for it. I said, there will need to be a part 2, and I can see that need to be the case. This may need to be a quarterly series, to be perfectly honest, seriously, to where once a quarter we jump on and cover some things. And I'll tell Peter that, if something comes up and it pops in his head, I want him to kind of keep a running note, so to speak, to say, next time I'm on Queen3 and King, I want to discuss this with them, and give you the ability to do that, because we're looking for things that will help benefit us individually as a community. And again, if you can get some business out of it, even the more better, right?
Because I need to come see Peter. My God.
Yeah,
please do.
We all do.
Yeah. And one of the things I was going to say about Peter too is that in my dealings with him, he has never, how sometimes you get to talking to somebody and they make you feel rushed, to where you got questions, you're trying to figure out what's happening. And generally the things that Peter did with are pretty serious freaking things, right?
Yeah.
Any attorney, right? You're not going and talking to an attorney about things that are super light. Generally, there's some serious stuff attached to it, right? And you don't want an attorney that's going to be rushing you through the situation or making you feel like your questions are stupid or anything like that. And I'll say that Peter has never once rushed. He's taken as much time as you possibly need. And he took every question seriously, and they got some of the coldest ice water in their office that I've ever had. So,
do Peter have layaway or payment plans?
Okay, there you go.
Yes,
bad question. No, that's really not.
I'm glad you asked that because yes, I mean, look, this is not a big law firm, right? I jokingly refer to the big firms as tall building lawyers. I don't pay the $10,000 a month in rent for some tall building in the middle of downtown. This is a small office. There are 4 people in this office, not 4 lawyers, just 4 people total. And so I know you were joking around payment plan, but yes, I do that. I had someone call me today.
Joking, but not joking.
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, that's awesome, though.
I said joking, but not joking.
No, but I do that because this is important, and I want people to have this. And I'm going to do what I can. I'm not ever going to turn somebody away. I'm sorry, I won't do a will for you because you don't have enough money. That you will never ever hear that from me. And if any lawyer is rushing you or making you feel dumb for asking a question, get up and leave.
Right.
Yeah.
They work for you. You're paying the bill. They're your employee. You don't have to have anybody make you feel small for asking a question.
Yeah, they would be stupid anyway because those are billable hours. Take your time. Take your time. And I knew that's why Peter was doing it. He was trying to run my bill up. So he's like, oh, no, Robin, take your time. Y'all think it's a good time for a break? You need to use it,
But this is one of those conversations where you don't, I feel like I don't know enough about.
Right.
So I'm going to have a lot of questions and want to know the ins and out of it. So I think that's great.
Yeah. And I think we need, again, I'm definitely going to schedule an appointment myself to go back in and kind of redo some things, so to speak, even though, like Brandy said, I've been diligent up to this point about what's going to happen and making sure that there's a trail, a document trail so Corey can come say, no, this is the deal, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to want to make it even easier, you know, by doing some things like saying he is an independent executor without bond and things of that nature.
Right.
You know, make it even easier for him. Don says, great conversation. Appreciate your questions. Good questions, Don. I think you helped facilitate that question. Consultation. He goes, thank you, Peter. Kirby says, definitely was a good show. And we got Snowman in the morning and Cole Johnson. So that's probably Brian. He goes, good evening, everyone. What's up, Brian?
Hey.
So, Peter, hey, we super appreciate you, man.
Yes.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
To take this opportunity to give our final thoughts. And we will start with Lily, go to Mika, Nikki, and then we'll finish with Peter and then myself.
Just want to say thank you to Peter for giving for taking some time out of his busy schedule to just talk to us about this, because super important, a conversation that we shy away from as a community that I feel like is super needed. And I learned a lot today. So automatically assuming that everything goes to my spouse, that's really not the case. Things like that. So just how to spell things out. And I will be making an appointment because I need to get this figured out. So thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Mika.
Again, thank you, Peter. Thank you to our audience. And like Alicia said, I was assuming a bunch of things and I'm totally wrong. Yeah. So like Alicia said, we need to get in and make some appointments just to make sure everything is in order.
Yeah.
And what I've learned from this show is no question is a dumb question. So I appreciate you for coming on.
And I'm going to have to schedule an appointment for our dad too, because Mika will steal from me.
Because what? Mika might steal from me. Nikki.
Hard.
I learned a lot of things myself from you doing this show, and things that I really didn't know about. Some I knew about, some I didn't know about. So I'm gonna also talk with my husband, since we are doing stuff like this with our business and all the other stuff, to make an appointment as well at some point to get help. Have you help us out.
Yeah, great. Yeah, she's saying she's gonna get off legal Zoom, is what she's saying.
No, I can't. So keep that lie to yourself.
He's an idiot.
Brandy said,
I was gonna say something else, but I won't.
Brandy says, Dad has everything spelled out. I realize that's important because people could be running around trying to find all your assets. Yeah.
That's true.
All right, and Peter, your final thoughts, and I also want you to tell folks where they can find you and stuff like that too.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me on. And I meant to mention this earlier. I wore purple just for the royalty.
Oh, I like it.
Love it.
I appreciate you having me on. I like doing this kind of stuff, and I like helping get the correct information out there, because there's always so much misinformation. And I appreciate it very much. So you can get me through our website. I make available my direct phone. I do my best to answer my own phone. The only time I don't is if I'm in court or if I'm with a client, and then always leave me a message and I will happily return your call. Our website is newhallpllc.com. And it's not an adjective. My partner's last name is actually New. So it's NEWHALLPLLC.com. And people can, there's a contact us form where if you have if you want to just kind of send a message and say, hey, I need help with the following subject area, you can do that. It has a map to our office. We're in Richardson. There you go. So for the website, just drop the ampersand New Hall PLLC. But Everett New is my partner, does all the business litigation and general work like that. And I do real estate, title work, and we got to get a better picture than that.
That was the young strapping lad right there.
I don't like that picture. Makes me look like I have a turkey waddle.
Let's see.
Look at, no, quit that.
I wouldn't have noticed it, Peter. You shouldn't have said anything.
No, I know. I didn't notice that until recently. That thing's been on our website for several years.
Yeah.
I saw it the other day and I thought, who put that on our website?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'd love to help anybody that needs it. I don't mind taking time out to answer questions.
Love it.
And I tried to put our banners and our names and stuff in green for the new and Hall PLLC color scheme too. It's hard matching that green exactly, but I try. And I'm gonna tell you something else about Peter too. When Peter has something serious that he's focused on that's going on, Peter ass won't eat. Okay, and so like we getting ready for trial and stuff like that. You go in there, Peter ass ain't ate all day because he too busy getting his stuff, and he just I don't want my stomach to be messed up. So the first thing I asked him is when he got in the studio before the show started, I said, "Did you eat today?" And I could tell the look on his face he had, and he goes, "I thought about it at 2:00 today." So this is a dude who's genuine and he cares about what he's doing. And again, hopefully you know me well enough to know that those are the only kind of people I hook up with anyway, folks that's genuine, So do yourself a favor, reach out to New and Hall PLLC. If you got any problems finding them, call me, message me, whatever the case may be. I can put you in contact with them myself. Again, I probably only got through half of what we were going to talk about because I knew it was going to be so many tentacles on this. For instance, I'm going to give you some things that I listed down. So we had talked about the expensive nature of it. That just came up naturally. I said, is it complicated? Is it time consuming? Making a will, is it for new parents, elderly? What do you do in those terms? Is a will forever? Do we always have to go through probate? If a will isn't filed or the deceased assets fair game, can estate executors be beneficiary of the deceased will? Does a will have to be executed immediately? Do the deceased debts die with him? That's a big one, the debt part of it, right? So again, and this isn't even the stuff that I had listed down for part 2. Right. So that's why I'm like, okay, this is probably going to be a little bit bigger than what we thought. And then from a final thoughts perspective, the idea that only wealthy people need wills is simply not true. Everyone needs a will, whether you're old, young, rich, poor, male, female. And I know this is a difficult subject to broach with your loved ones. Please fight through that difficulty and get a plan in place. The conversation doesn't need to mean something is wrong, Corey. Or an assassination attempt is imminent. This is just wisdom at work. So again, please do yourself a favor, get yourself a will, at least start having the conversations, and you may be surprised at how it changed your general outlook on how you're living life as a whole. So we appreciate all your viewers. Again, we thank you, Peter, and we will see you the next time on another episode of Queen3 King. In fact, let me just state this. Next week's episode, we are having, it's called A Work in Progress. And we got the pastor. We got Andre Jones, the 40-year radio veteran, coming back to discuss a work in progress. Do you hear people all the time saying, I'm a work in progress? And does that see them Teflon coating to act the damn fool? Well, we can find out, because I think people use that shit too much. So join us next week for that. That ought to be an interesting conversation as well. And again, we'll see you on the next episode of Queen3 King.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you all very much.
Are we smiling or what are we doing?
The Queen Bee has arrived.
You know. What's your out then?
So I'm gonna start with both of y'all's hands right here.
Look for my thumb.
Look for your thumb.
Like if you can see my thumb on this mic.